Hey everybody, this is Zach with ZachOS Tech. Today we're going to be looking at how to make this application with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If that sounds like fun to you, then stick around. Let's get started. All right, so before we get into this project, let's actually look at what you'll be building. So this is the calculator that we're going to be building today. So it basically functions like a normal calculator would. We'll make it to where you can string together operations. You can do subtraction, multiplication, division, clear it. The decimal place works, and it doesn't let you type more than one decimal place at a time. You can also do the percent of whatever number you typed in. So if you wanted to, you could do like, if you're going to calculate a tip, you could do $30 times 120% for a good 20% tip, and it will give you the exact amount that you need to tip. All right, so let's actually jump into VS Code and get started with this application. So I'm going to put this over here on the side. All right, so to get started, you can download the files from the GitHub repository I link in the description, or you can just start from scratch like I'm going to do right now and code along with me. So to start, we're going to create an index.html file. We'll create a style.css, an app.js, and that's it. I'm going to copy the background image over to this folder as well, but I would recommend just going to Unsplash or a different website and downloading your own background that you like so that it could be personal to you and it's not the exact same calculator that I made. All right, if we jump over to our index.html and do the exclamation point and hit enter, it'll fill in the Emmet boilerplate, and then we can just name this calculator. And then below the title, we want to make sure that we put in link and then go to the CSS one. Our CSS file is already named style.css, so that's all we need to do there. And then we will start styling everything that we need. So the first thing we want is a container. So we're going to make a div with the class of container here, and then we're going to do a div with a class of calculator. And inside that, we're going to have two different sections. The first section will be this top part, which it's basically the screen of the calculator, and the rest are going to be the buttons. So to do the top, let's name it screen. And then within the screen, we're going to do another div with the class of previous operand, and then another of current operand. Okay, and the previous is going to be the one that shows up here, while the current operand is going to show right here. All right, and then after that, we are done with the screen portion, and so we can start making the buttons. So the first one that we're going to have is button AC. That's going to be the text inside. The next one will be the percent sign. We're going to use grid to determine the layout of this calculator. So we're going to do left to right, and then we'll do the next row after that. So this will be the division sign, which to get that symbol, you can do and divide or ampersand divide colon. Okay, and the next button will be 7, and then 8, and then 9. And then we're going to do the times button, which you could do ampersand times colon. All right, so then we'll do 4, 5, and 6, 4, 5, and 6. The next one's going to be minus, and then 1, 2, 3, then a plus, 0, period, and equals. And then before we finish this, let's make sure that we link to our app.js file at the very bottom of our body tag. Okay, let's run this with live server. All right, so I am opening this with live server now, and if you don't have live server, you can go to the extensions and then type in live server, search for it. It's this one with the purple icon. And then what that'll let you do is if you have a folder open in VS Code, you can run the HTML in your browser. So if you run that with live server, it'll show all the buttons like this, and that's not very pretty. It's not formatted at all. But we are going to now get into doing that. So let's hop over to the CSS file right now. And to get started, I'm going to do the asterisk and then box sizing border box just to help with sizing and formatting all of these. All right, font family is going to be, I'm going to do Arial. Let's do a font weight of 400 or normal. It's the same. And then a font size of 62.5%. So we're going to use rems in this project, and if you set the base font size to 62.5%, then all of the rems are based on a root size of 10 pixels. And so when you need to set something as 20 pixels, you would just set it to 2 rems, and that'll make more sense once we get into setting the font size on everything. But this just makes it really easy for us to see what font size everything is with still being able to set it as a rem. So let's do the body next. And then I like to add a padding of 0 and a margin of 0 just to start, because usually browsers will set a little bit of padding and margin already. And so if you don't set these to 0 ahead of time, then it'll throw off anything you're trying to design. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is a display flex, a height of 100 view height, VH. We're going to justify content center and align items center. Okay, so that should center everything. And then we want the background to be centered and cover, no repeat. And then we could do our URL dot and then put our background in there. So no repeat, we'll just keep it from not making a tiled background. And then center and cover, make it right in the middle and make it cover the entire part of the background so it fills everything. That's all we need to do with the body. All right, so now we're going to format the calculator grid layout. So let's copy the class name. We're going to do dot calculator, and then we're going to do a display grid, justify content center, and align items center. All right, so this should force everything right in the center of the screen, which is good. That's where we want our calculator to live. All right, so now what we can do is we're going to also set a max width of 100 view width. So if you're viewing this on a mobile device, it's not going to cut off the edges of the calculator. And then we're going to use the grid template columns and grid template row to set the grid of icons that we are going to want to show up. So we'll do a repeat for 100 px. And with that, it's already looking more like a calculator. Let's do the grid template rows. We're going to set it to min content, min max, 120 pixels, auto. We'll do repeat 500 pixels. I think that doesn't really look very great, but if we switch align items to align content, then it'll stop it from chopping off the button height based on the text inside. So it'll fill that whole space, which is what we want with the calculator. So let's start to style those buttons because I can hardly read what those are actually saying. So let's do calculator button. And this little side caret means any button inside the calculator div. So this is going to target every button on the page. Let's do a font size of, I want it to be 32 pixels, but instead of setting pixels, I'll do 3.2 rem, and that'll set it to 32 pixels. All right, let's make a cursor pointer, because right now the cursor doesn't change at all when we hover over these things. But if we switch to a cursor pointer, it'll change to this hand when you're on a computer. And then let's do a border, 1 pixel solid RGBA, and we're going to set this to 255, 255, 255, and then 0.03. So you can't see that right now, but we will see it shortly. Outline none, color white, and we're going to set a transition of 0.25 seconds. All right, that does not look good right now, but just bear with me. It'll get better. Okay, so now that we actually have something to work with here, let's go back and make the container. So we'll set the background of RGBA again with 255, 255, 255 with an alpha of 0.1. We'll set the color to white. And while we already set the color down here as white, we want to set it up here as well so that when we have text in the screen part at the top, it'll actually be white as well. We'll set overflow hidden because we want to round the corners of this calculator. Border radius 10 pixels. And now you can see the rounded corners. If we didn't do the overflow hidden, then it would just be like this sharp corner right there. So we want to round everything that's on the corners of it. Let's do a backdrop filter with a blur of 5 pixels. And then we're going to set the border for the top, and we're going to set it to 0.25. We're going to do 1 pixel solid, and then that RGB. So we're going to do that 4 times. This one will be left because we want it to look like the light's shining from the top left. And this is going to look like a sheet of glass once we're actually finished with it. These bottom ones, I want to set border right and then border bottom. But I don't want these to be shiny like the other ones, so I'm going to change these 255s to 0, and so it makes it dark. And then let's do a box shadow of 5 pixels, 5 pixels, 30 pixels, RGBA of 000, and then 0.2 for the alpha value. All right, so now we need to style all the buttons, and we need to make sure that 0 spans 2 spaces and that the clear button spans 2 spaces as well. So in order to target those, we're going to want to set a data attribute on all of the keys so that we can quickly identify the large group of what the keys are. So let's go back to index.html, and then what we can do on all the numbers is instead of setting a different class on these, what we can do is set a data attribute and set it to data-number, and then we can reference that in the JavaScript and we can reference it in the CSS directly. Okay, so we're going to set that on all the numbers, and I'm going to hold Alt right now and click all the spaces that I want that to be in, and then hit Control V. And then I'm going to do the same thing on plus, minus, divide, and multiply, and do data-operator. I'll set an individual one for data-%, set all clear to be data-clear, and then data-equals. So now what we can do here is we can reference the data-number by just doing square brackets around the data attribute. And if we set this equal to something, you can do data-number equals whatever you set it equal to. But in this case, it'll target everything with data-number. And so we're going to do a background color of transparent. All right, so that made all the numbers transparent. And we did the decimal place as a number just because it's going to be inputted into the screen, and so it's going to function just like a number when we start working on the JavaScript. So we're going to do a transition of 0 seconds as well, and that'll make sense more later when we're doing the hover colors. Okay, so let's do the hover color now. All right, calculator, button, hover. This one will also have a transition of 0 seconds, and the background RGBA 255, 255, and then 0.05. Okay, so everything is working with the hover. Cool. And then let's set calculator button active. And we'll set the background to be RGBA 00.2. So if we click, it'll actually give you feedback on what button you clicked on. Let's fix how AC here doesn't show in these two cells, and the equal sign doesn't show in those two cells as well. So to do that, we're going to create a utility class called span2. And what we're going to set this to is grid column span2. So the name is fitting because what that's going to do is allow us to put this class on any button now. So like the equals, if we do class equals span-2, now that button will span 2 cells. And so instead of having to write that multiple times for different divs or buttons, we can just use this utility class and add that to whatever div we want to make span 2 cells. So let's also put it up here on this AC. Okay, that kind of broke everything, but if we were to look at the code here, the screen is actually this little square right here because we haven't set how it should look yet. So once we have the screen taking up the entire top part, then it'll move the buttons down a little bit further, and then that'll kind of fix everything for us. Okay, so now let's go back to the styles.css. Before we continue messing with the buttons, let's do the dot screen and set grid column the same way we did for the spanning 2. But we can set this to, if we put in a number, it's what column marker we want it to start with. So we'll start with 1. And then if we do a slash, it'll go to whatever one we specify. So if we do -1, it'll go from the first column to the very last column. That worked, and now everything lines up properly. Okay, so let's go back up. Now we can style the other buttons to make them look a little bit better. Let's do the data operator one and comma data equals. So these are all going to be styled the same way. Let's do a background color of RGBA, and let's do 255, 72, 0, and 0.2. So it gives it like an orangey type color here. Oh, I see what we messed up. We made the equal sign really big. We don't want the equals. And this is what's nice about this utility class. It makes it really nice because all we'd have to do is copy and paste it to the 0, and everything still works fine without even having to touch the CSS. And we can quickly see which ones are spanning 2 by just looking at the HTML right here. Let's go back to CSS and let's do data clear, which is the AC button, and data %. So this one will have a background color of RGBA, and we'll do 255, 255, 255, 0.1. So it's a little bit lighter than the numbers here. And I am happy with how this is looking so far. It definitely looks like a piece of glass, and that's what we're going for right now. So let's finish formatting how the text should show on the screen. So to do this, we'll do like 43 plus 513. All right, so that's showing way up there, really, really tiny. So let's do a display flex, align items, flex end, justify content space around, save that and see what happens. Okay, the text is still really, really tiny down here, as you can see. All right, before we finish with the screen, let's do screen previous operand, which is that, and then we're going to do the current operand. Let's make sure that the color is right. We're going to do RGBA 255.255.75 with a font size. I forgot there we go. Font size of, let's do 2.4 rems. Let's actually copy this because there's not too much that we're changing between these two. And then current operand. So let's just set this to 1 and then set this to 4 rems. Perfect. So let's change the flex direction to column so that they stack on top of each other. And then to get it a little bit away from the wall or the edge of the calculator, let's add a padding of 10 pixels. Okay, that looks good. And then if we were to have like a ton of numbers in this, it would cut it off here. So we want to instead set a word wrap, break word, and then we have to tell it what words to break. Word break and break all. So then it'll go to the next line if it goes past the length of the screen here. And then let's set this back to 513, 324 plus 513, break all. So that's all we really need to do for the styles.css page. This all looks good. We just want to add the functionality to this calculator now, and that will be all in JavaScript. So let's move on to the app.js. And what we want to do in here is the first thing is declare all of our constants. And so all of the buttons are going to be constants. The text area up here is going to be a constant. And then we need to be able to specify each individual one of these operator buttons. So let's start with const number buttons, and we'll do a document.query selector all data-numbers. Data-number, I believe, is how we put it in there. Let's go down, and then instead of number, what we can change this to is operator. Data.operator. Yep. Okay. The next one will be equals. But since this is only a single button, we have to do query selector instead of query selector all, and equals button. So since this is just one button, we have to do query selector. Query selector all will create an object out of this, and it'll have all of the buttons stored in kind of like an array, but it's a little bit different. Let's do the percent button. Document.query selector data percent. Let's do const clear button equals document.query selector, and we'll do data clear. I'm just going to copy that for the next two. And for this one, we will set the name previous operand text. And this one will be current operand text. And I believe, okay, we don't have a data attribute on this. So let's do data previous operand and then set previous current operand. All right, so that's all of the constants that we need to specify right now. So the next thing that we're going to have to do, we would have to create all of the different functions. So like the addition function and how to clear this calculator and how to handle multiple inputs and different things like that. So the best way that we can go about this is to create a calculator class and then add the different methods to that class. So then when we initialize a new calculator, we can type in calculator.clear and it'll clear the input. So to do that, let's declare a class of calculator. And then inside this class, we need a constructor for when we're creating the calculator. And we're going to pass in the previous operand text and the current operand text. All right. And then we will set this dot previous operand text equal to previous operand text. Okay. And we'll do the same thing for the current. All right, so let's outline all of the different methods that we want to be able to run on this calculator. So we already said that we want to be able to run calculator.clear to be able to clear the input. Let's do percent, so we can use that percent button. All right, and then when we're typing in numbers, they have to be added on to the end of the number that's currently in there. It's appending it to the end of the current number. So let's do append number, and we need to pass in a number for this method. All right, we're going to do an operator. So this is going to let us select the different operators in here. So why don't we make it select operator and then operation. Let's do that. Let's make a calculate method, and that will run the calculation when we hit equals. And then we want to be able to update the screen as well. So we just have to fill out these methods, and then we'll be able to use our calculator here. So now I'm going to clear out this text so that it's not getting in the way of what we're trying to do, and that we can actually see what we're typing in. Okay. So the first thing we have to do, since we did create that class, is now we have to make a calculator constant and set that equal to new calculator, and then pass in the previous operand text and the current operand text. Okay. And that is it for that part. And then we can now set an event listener on the number buttons here. So let's do number buttons dot and we'll do a for each. For each button, we'll add an event listener, and we'll listen for the click event. When that happens, it will run this function, which will do calc append number. Let's do the button dot inner text, and then calc update screen. Let's fill out this append number and this update screen method so that we can actually do something with these numbers that we're clicking on. Okay, so here at the update screen, let's set this dot current operand text inner text equal to this dot current operand. And let's go up here to this clear. Okay, so we'll clear this dot current operand. We'll set it equal to just an empty string. So this dot previous operand, also set that equal to an empty string. Do this dot operation equals undefined. So now before we load the calculator, let's do this dot clear to clear everything in the calculator before it actually loads for us. So when it's being constructed. So I just commented out these two, the append number and the update screen, and I just did this current operand inner text equals the button inner text that we have here. And I'm looking at the console logs because it's giving cannot set property inner text of undefined at HTML button. Maybe it needs to be operand text. Let's try that. Nope, can't set inner text of undefined. Okay, we're calling this dot clear, which is calling this. It's setting the current operand and the previous operand and the operation to nothing. Inner text. Okay, so let's, instead of doing this, let's comment even that out and do console log button dot inner text. Okay, so we console log the button dot inner text. Let's see. Okay, so it's actually giving us the correct value here. What if we did? Okay, so now if we set calc.current operand text inner text, we can see how it's going to show up here, but we need to be able to append to that. So let's instead call the append number and the update screen functions, or the methods. We'll take this, we'll go up to append number, and instead of putting calc here, let's do this since it's this specific calculator that we're working with. So the inner text will equal this dot current operand text, and if we let's try to do plus num and see what actually happens here. Okay, so let's fix this update screen method. Okay, so let's do this dot current operand equals this dot current operand plus the number. Okay, so that's working. All right, so let's address this decimal thing really quick, because to fix that we can just do an if statement here in the append number. So if number is equal to decimal and this current operand dot includes, so it's going to tell if it includes a period already, and we'll have it return. So we do like 1, 2, 3 period, 1, 2, 3 period. It's not going to let you click that again because it already is included in the number. Okay, so now since the button is working and it's appending the number to the text, now we want to be able to select an operator here and do the computation. So let's go down to where we have our event listeners, and the same way with the number buttons, we'll do operator buttons for each, and we'll do a button.add event listener. We'll also listen for the click again. So you could basically just copy number buttons and then just change it to operator. That would have probably been easier. So we'll do calc, and then we'll select operator button.inner text, and then we'll want to update the screen as well after that. Okay, so let's go up here to select operator. And what we want to do here is set this dot operation equal to operation, the operation that we're passing in. Then we'll set the previous operand to this dot current operand. I can't get that word right. Okay, and then we'll clear what the current operand is. So this dot current operand equals an empty string. So now let's do like 3 plus. So we haven't yet included that in this update screen method down here to update the text of the previous operand. So let's, now it should, boom, now it went to the top part. That's still not where we want to be as far as doing the computation, but it's at least storing that data and you can see how it's storing it. So this is previous value, this is the current value. You hit the operator and then you have the previous value and the current value that you can add together. So we're getting there. So now that we have the previous and the current operand actually working, let's do the calculate function so that we can run this computation. So let's create an empty variable called compute. We'll set let previous equal to, and we need to parse float this dot previous operand. And then we'll do the same thing for current, this dot current operand. So this is taking the string that we have in previous operand. Since we're appending the number, it's storing it as a string. So we have to convert it back to a float so that we can actually do computations with the number. So we need to make sure that there is a value in the previous and the current, and that it is a number in both. So what we can do is run an if statement, and then we could do if is not a number and check if previous is not a number. And then we can do and here, or let's do or. So let's do two types, and then is not a number, and then current, and we will return if either of those is not a number, okay? And then that will keep the rest of this calculate method from actually running if that's the case. So now we're going to do a switch statement. And if you're using VS Code, if you start typing switch and then go to this one with the square, it'll fill in, it'll basically give you a template for how to write a switch statement. And so this is going to check for this dot operation, and then we're going to basically check if the operation equals one of the operators that we're going to pass in, and if it does, it'll run the different cases that we put in here. So it's kind of like an if statement, but it could be a little bit more concise for things like this. So let's do the plus case. So if this dot operation equals plus, we're going to set compute equal to previous plus current. That's it. And then this break will prevent any further case statements from actually running. So we're going to do case minus colon compute equals previous minus current case. And then here's where it gets a little tricky. We can't just put in times here. I guess we can for a placeholder, but it's not going to work properly, and I'll show you that in a second. Compute equals previous times current, and then the last part is case division. Compute equals previous divided by current. We also forgot this break in all of these. So if you forgot the break, what it will do is it would have ran the multiplication, division, and subtraction switch statement if this was true. It would have gone through all of them, and it would have caused a bug. Let's switch this last break to return, because if none of these equals the operator, we don't want it to actually do any computation. And then after this switch statement, let's set this dot current operand equal to compute, and then this operation equal to undefined, and this dot previous operand equal to an empty string. Let's now do, I meant to do that. Actually, it doesn't make sense to copy this. Let's do equals button dot add event listener. We'll listen for the click event, and then if we do click on the equals button, let's run calc.calculate and calc.update screen. So now let's do 1 plus 2 equals 3. Awesome. What about, let's refresh this. Let's do 3 minus 2 should equal 1. 1 times 5 equals, see, that's broken. And even if we did, that's 3 equals. So 59 divided by 3 equals, we can't do it because it doesn't have an operator selected that it can recognize. So if we go back up here, it's actually looking for this X looking piece of text. All right, so how we can identify or copy that value, you might be able to just Google it and copy the value from there, but I'm going to console log in here the button.inner text, and this is in the operator buttons. So now if we reopen the console log, it'll give us what these actually are. So it's really small, but if you copy that X right there, and then we go back up to where multiplication is, we can paste that in for that value. And then let's go back to here and copy the division symbol as well. Put it in for that. And then we can get rid of this console log, save. And then let's try doing 1 plus 1 equals times 2 equals 4 divided by 4 should equal 1. Perfect. So that's all working properly. We can't clear anything yet. So that's probably what we want to do next. Let's go up to the, actually it already clears everything if we ran the clear function. So let's set an event listener for the clear button and then just link it to that. Okay, clear button dot add event listener, listen for the click event, run this function, run an arrow function that will call the calc.clear and then calc.update screen. Because if we just did the calc.clear, those values are actually cleared out of the memory, but it didn't update the screen. So we have to do both each time in order for it to fully get rid of it. I think the only button that doesn't work is %. So let's do %button dot add event listener. Click, run an arrow function that'll call calc dot % and calc dot update screen. All right, and so if we go up here to percent, this one's actually just one line that we had to add here. So this dot current operand equals this dot current operand divided by 100. So that'll create, like if we did 50 and then percent, it'll change it to what that percentage is as a decimal. So a 100% is 1 out of 1. Okay, a 75% is 0.75. So the only thing that is not working is it's not showing what the operand is up here, which would be helpful to be able to identify which button you clicked on and what operation is going to take place when this calculation happens. So to do that, let's actually go down to update screen, and we're going to write an if statement between these two values. If this dot operation does not equal undefined, then we will run this. Okay, and so here, let's pass in the backticks so that we can use JavaScript as well as text, but it'll also let us format this space without having to pass in a plus space plus and then the next value. So it makes it a little bit easier to read. So we'll do this previous operand and then put a space and then do this dot operation. Okay, and now when we do 1, 2 plus, well, that's strange. Okay, so I have a typo here. This dot operation. So this needs to say this dot operation. I don't know how I messed that up. Well, let's try. Okay, there we go. It's appending the plus and then equals 15. It didn't clear it out though, so that's a little wonky. So minus 5 equals 10. So let's actually do else this dot previous operand text dot inner text equals an empty string. So now if we do like 1 plus 2 equals 3, 3 minus 5 plus 6 minus 2 minus. So that's working for the most part, but when we do like when we string together multiple things, we don't actually see what the current value is. We just see 6 minus. So let's go back up to the choose operation and fix why this seems to not be working correctly. So here, let's do, all right. So when we select 1 and then hit the plus, we don't want it to add anything immediately. So let's do if this dot current operand, if it equals nothing, then we're going to return. So basically, if we do 1 plus, it's not going to try to fire the calculate method. So now, if we have this dot previous operand, if it does not equal nothing, we're going to run this dot calculate. So let's try to do 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus, it should make it 6. Okay, 9, it'll make it 15. We hit a plus again. Okay, minus, okay, 21 minus 5 minus 6 minus 5 again times 2 plus 9 divided by 5. 3.8. Clear. All right, everybody, I think that about does it for us here today. This is a very good looking calculator app, and it is fully functioning. It would look good in anybody's portfolio. If you wanted to share a link to your version of this project, definitely leave a comment below, and I will take a look at it and maybe give some feedback on your work. If you have any suggestions for future videos to make, please leave a comment below, because this video itself was in response to a suggestion for a calculator video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.